Story 1. The Mirror Truck. My name is Derek Holloway, and I've been running night shifts for Precision Tow and Recovery out of Bakersfield, California, for 11 years. You work the graveyard shift long enough, you get used to the strange calls. Drunk drivers who swear they're sober. People who ran out of gas in places that don't make sense. Vehicles found abandoned in the middle of nowhere, with the keys still in the ignition. But what happened on Highway 178, near the Kern River Canyon, on September 14th, changed everything I thought I knew about this job. The call came in at 2:47 a.m. Dispatch said a trucker reported an abandoned tow truck on the shoulder, near mile marker 34. Hazards on, no driver in sight. Standard procedure for us is to check on our own. Could be one of our guys broke down, or it could be a competitor who needed help. Professional courtesy and all that. The night was clear. Temperature hovering around 58 degrees, and I'd just finished a simple jump start in Bodfish. The canyon road was empty, which wasn't unusual for a Tuesday night. I spotted the truck from about a quarter mile out. The rotating amber lights were bright against the darkness, painting the canyon walls in rhythmic orange sweeps. As I got closer, my headlights illuminated the vehicle fully, and something felt immediately wrong. The truck was a Precision Tow and Recovery vehicle. Same navy blue paint job, same yellow striping, same company logo on the door. We only had 5 trucks in our fleet, and I knew the location of every single one. 2 were in the yard for maintenance. 1 was working a breakdown near Tehachapi. 1 was handling a multi-car accident on Highway 99. And I was in the 5th. I pulled up behind it and hit my lights, adding my own amber strobes to the mix. The truck ahead looked brand new, cleaner than any of our vehicles ever stayed, even fresh from detailing. I grabbed my flashlight and radio, calling it in to dispatch. Dispatch, this is Unit 5. I'm at mile marker 34. This abandoned truck has our livery on it, but it's not one of ours. Looks like someone's running a fake operation. I'm going to check it out. Copy that, Unit 5. Use caution. Highway patrol is 20 minutes out if you need backup. I approached the truck slowly, sweeping my flashlight beam across the vehicle. The license plate caught my eye first. 7KXT Soon 91. That was my plate number. I stopped walking and looked back at my own truck, then forward again. The plate was identical. Everything was identical. Same mud splatter pattern on the rear fender. Same cracked passenger mirror I'd been meaning to replace for 2 months. Same dent in the rear bumper from when I backed into a pole last March. My chest tightened. This wasn't just a similar truck. This was my truck. I circled around to the driver's side, flashlight raised. The window was down. I shined the light inside and immediately wished I hadn't. Sitting in the driver's seat was a man in a Precision Tow Recovery uniform. He was slumped forward slightly, hands resting on the steering wheel, eyes open and staring straight ahead through the windshield. His face was exactly like mine. Same stubble, same scar over the left eyebrow from a bar fight when I was 23. Same small mole on the right cheek. But his skin had a grayish pallor, and he wasn't breathing. Jesus Christ, I whispered, stumbling backward. My hand instinctively went to my radio, but I couldn't make my fingers work the button. I was staring at my own corpse. The dead man's eyes shifted. They didn't blink, didn't move naturally. They just suddenly focused on me, tracking my movement as I backed away. His mouth didn't move, but I heard a voice that sounded like mine, except hollow, like it was coming from the bottom of a well. You're late. I ran back to my truck, my boots sliding on the loose gravel. My hands were shaking so badly, it took 3 tries to open the door. I got inside and locked it, which was stupid. Locks don't stop, whatever the hell that was. But instinct took over. I grabbed the radio. "Dispatch, I need highway patrol now. Something's wrong here. I stopped. How do I explain this? There's a situation. Send backup immediately. Unit 5, what's the nature of the emergency?" Before I could answer, my radio crackled with another voice. My voice. "Unit 5, disregard. False alarm. The vehicle has been identified and secured. I'm handling it." "I didn't say that," I shouted into the radio. "Dispatch, that wasn't me." But when dispatch responded, their tone had changed to routine acknowledgement. "Copy that, Unit 5. Glad it's resolved. Return to patrol." I looked up at the other truck. The driver's door was now open, and the figure was standing beside it, facing me. It looked exactly like me, down to the coffee stain on my uniform shirt from earlier that evening. It raised one hand in a slow wave, then pointed at me, then pointed at the ground where it stood. My truck's engine died, just cut out completely, all the lights with it, including my amber strobes. The only illumination came from the other truck's still rotating beacons. I tried to restart the engine. Nothing. Completely dead. My phone had no signal, not unusual in the canyon, but the timing was too perfect. The figure started walking toward me. Not fast, just a steady, purposeful walk. I tried the engine again, pumping the gas, turning the key so hard I thought it might break off. Nothing. The figure was 20 feet away now. 15. I could see its face clearly in the amber light. My face, but wrong. The eyes were too fixed, the expression too neutral. It moved with a slight stiffness, like someone who was learning to walk for the first time. 10 feet away. It reached for the door handle. Every light in my truck suddenly blazed to life. Headlights, strobes, interior lights. Even the radio came on at full volume, blasting static. The figure jerked backward, raising its arms to shield its face. My engine roared to life without me touching the key. My foot slammed the accelerator on pure instinct, and the truck lurched forward. I cranked the wheel, barely avoiding the guardrail as I swerved around the other vehicle. In my rearview mirror, I saw the figure standing in the middle of the road, illuminated by my taillights. It was waving again, but both arms this time, like someone seeing off a friend. Then it was gone, swallowed by the darkness as I rounded the bend. I drove straight to the highway patrol station in Lake Isabella. Didn't stop for anything. The two officers on duty probably thought I was drunk or high with how frantically I was talking. They drove back to mile marker 34 with me. There was nothing there. No truck, no figure, no evidence anything had been there at all. They checked my truck thoroughly. No mechanical issues, battery fully charged, everything working perfectly. One of the officers pulled up our company's vehicle registrations. 5 trucks, all accounted for, all with different plates. None matching 7KX T491, which was definitely my plate number on my actual truck. They suggested fatigue, maybe carbon monoxide exposure, and strongly recommended I go home and get checked out by a doctor. But 3 days later, I got a call from dispatch about an abandoned tow truck on Highway 178 near mile marker 34. Different driver found it this time, guy named Marcus, who'd been with the company for 6 years. He described everything exactly as I'd experienced it. Same truck matching his vehicle, same figure in the driver's seat wearing his face, same hollow voice. Marcus quit the next day. So did I, as soon as I heard his story. The company sent another driver to investigate 2 weeks later. Rookie named Amanda Chen. Been on the job maybe 3 months. She found her mirror truck, saw herself dead in the driver's seat. But Amanda didn't run. She said something compelled her to reach through the window and touch the figure's hand. The moment she made contact, she told me later, she felt herself split, like she was in two places simultaneously. She was standing outside the truck and sitting inside it, dead and alive at the same time. She yanked her hand back and the feeling stopped. But for those few seconds, she said she could feel what it was like to be the thing in the truck. It wasn't alive or dead. It was waiting. It had been waiting for a long time, in a place that existed alongside the road, but not quite on it. A mirror place. Amanda still works for Precision. She goes back to mile marker 34 once a month, always at night, always alone. She parks her truck and waits, watching for the mirror truck to appear. She says she can feel it calling to her, telling her that her waiting self is incomplete, that they need to merge to become whole. She hasn't touched it again, but she told me she wants to. She's started to feel like the version of herself driving around, doing tow calls, living her normal life. That's the copy. The real Amanda is the one waiting in the truck on that empty stretch of highway. I don't go near Highway 178 anymore. I took a dispatcher job in a truck yard in Fresno. Stay off the roads entirely. But sometimes, late at night, when I'm alone in the yard office, I see movement in the security monitor that shows the entrance gate. A navy blue tow truck with yellow striping pulls up, just sitting there at the edge of the camera's range. The driver never gets out, never moves, just sits there until dawn, when the image flickers and disappears. I know eventually I'll have to go look. The call will come in. Abandoned truck at our gate, driver unresponsive. And when I walk out there with my flashlight, I'll see myself waiting behind the wheel. One day, I'll be too tired or too curious, and I'll reach out and touch the glass. And then, I'll understand what Amanda meant about feeling incomplete. The worst part is, I've started to want it. To want to know what it's like in the mirror place, where all the waiting versions exist, where the road goes on forever in the darkness, and you never have to leave. Story 2. The Passenger. Jennifer Reeves drove for Yellow Star Taxi Company in Portland, Oregon for 8 years before the night of October 3rd. She worked the 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. shift by choice. Better tips from the bar crowd, less traffic, and she liked the quiet that settled over the city after midnight. At 42 years old, she'd seen every kind of passenger. Emotional drunks, silent business people, chatty college kids, the occasional threatening creep who got one warning before she pulled over and told them to get out. She kept pepper spray in the driver's door and a panic button that alerted dispatch. She'd never had to use either one. The pickup request came through her app at 3:18 a.m. The location was a residential street in the Hawthorne district, a neighborhood she knew well. The passenger's name showed as M. Cartwright, and the destination was an address on the east side near Laurelhurst Park. Standard fare, about a 20-minute drive at that hour. Jennifer confirmed the pickup and headed over, her dash camera recording as always. She pulled up to the address, a well-maintained craftsman house with a neat lawn, porch light on. A figure stood at the end of the driveway, backlit by the street lamp. As Jennifer pulled closer, her headlights swept across the passenger. A woman, maybe mid-30s, wearing a long, dark coat and carrying a small purse. Her hair was pulled back in a neat bun, and she had a pleasant, unremarkable face. The kind of person you'd pass on the street without a second glance. The woman opened the rear passenger door and slid in smoothly. "Thank you for coming so quickly," she said. Her voice was polite, with a slight accent Jennifer couldn't quite place. British, maybe, or South African. "No problem. You're headed to Laurelhurst Park area, right?" Jennifer asked, pulling away from the curb. Yes, that's correct. The woman settled into her seat, placing her purse beside her. It's a lovely night for a drive, isn't it? Jennifer glanced at her rearview mirror. The woman was sitting perfectly still, hands folded in her lap, looking straight ahead. Sure is. You out late for work or heading home from somewhere? Coming home, the woman said. I've been away for quite some time. They drove in silence for a few blocks. Jennifer noticed the woman hadn't put on her seatbelt, but she didn't feel like making an issue of it. The streets were empty anyway. As they crossed Hawthorne Boulevard and headed north, Jennifer felt an odd chill, despite the heater running. She adjusted the temperature, turning it up a notch. Could you turn that down, please? The woman asked. I find it rather warm. Jennifer turned it down, even though she was still cold. Another few blocks passed. The streetlights created rhythmic patterns of light and shadow through the car's interior. In the rearview mirror, Jennifer watched the woman's reflection. She still hadn't moved, hadn't shifted position, or looked at her phone, or done any of the small fidgeting movements people usually made during a ride. She just sat there, hands folded, staring forward. So, what do you do for work? Jennifer asked, trying to fill the silence that was becoming uncomfortable. I'm in collections, the woman replied. Like debt collections? Something like that. I retrieve things that have been lost or misplaced, things that need to be returned to their proper place. The phrasing was odd, but Jennifer had heard stranger things from passengers. She chalked it up to the accent and kept driving. They were passing through a darker stretch now, between the commercial district and the residential area near the park. Fewer streetlights, more shadows. Do you know what time it is? The woman asked. Jennifer glanced at her dashboard clock. 3:34 a.m. That's later than I thought, the woman said softly. I was afraid it might be. Jennifer looked in the rearview mirror again. The woman was now looking directly at the mirror, meeting Jennifer's eyes in the reflection. Her expression hadn't changed, still pleasant, still calm. But something about her gaze made Jennifer's stomach clench. The woman's eyes were wrong. Not the color or shape, but something in the way they focused, like they were looking at Jennifer from a great distance while simultaneously being right behind her. You know, the woman said, I've been in this taxi before. Many times, actually. Oh, yeah. Jennifer tried to keep her voice light. I drive a lot of regulars. Sorry if I don't remember. You wouldn't. It wasn't with you driving. The woman tilted her head slightly. Tell me, Jennifer. And you don't mind if I use your name, do you? Since it's right there on your permit displayed on the dashboard. Do you believe in debts that transcend normal understanding? Jennifer's hands tightened on the steering wheel. The woman knowing her name wasn't strange. Passengers could see the driver information. But the way she said it, the phrasing of the question, sent a spike of adrenaline through Jennifer's system. I'm not sure what you mean, Jennifer said carefully. She was still about 10 minutes from the destination, too far to just get through the ride and get the woman out. Her hand drifted toward the driver's door, closer to the pepper spray. A debt, the woman continued, is something owed, something that must be repaid. Sometimes people incur debts without realizing it. Small choices, moments of selfishness or carelessness that create imbalances requiring correction. Do you understand? Look, I'm just a driver, Jennifer said. I take people where they need to go. If you're trying to pitch me some kind of religious or philosophical thing, I'm not interested. The woman smiled. But you are more than just a driver, Jennifer. On March 17th, 2019, at approximately 2:45 a.m., you were driving this same route. Do you remember? Jennifer's breath caught. March 17th, 2019. She remembered. She'd tried not to remember, but she did. I see you do, the woman said, her smile widening slightly. A young man named Tyler Chen requested a pickup from a bar on Hawthorne. He was intoxicated, barely able to stand. He got into your taxi and gave an address in Laurelhurst. This same address I'm going to now, in fact. Quite a coincidence. Jennifer's mouth had gone dry. She couldn't speak. Tyler fell asleep in the back seat, the woman continued, her voice taking on a narrative quality, like she was reading from a script. When you arrived at the destination, you tried to wake him. He was non-responsive. You checked his pulse and realized he wasn't breathing. Alcohol poisoning, perhaps, or a drug interaction. You didn't know. What you did know was that you had a choice to make. Stop, Jennifer whispered. You could call 911 immediately, but Tyler had vomited during the ride, and you worried you might be held liable somehow, or your car would be held as evidence, and you'd lose income. Or perhaps he was already dead, and it wouldn't matter anyway. So you made a decision. You drove 4 more blocks to a quieter street, pulled over, and then called 911, claiming you'd just discovered him. Those 4 minutes, Jennifer. Those 4 minutes while Tyler Chen's brain was dying from lack of oxygen. 4 minutes that might have made the difference between brain damage and full recovery. But you wanted to distance yourself from the location, from the liability. Tears were running down Jennifer's face. I called for help. I did call. You did, the woman agreed. And Tyler Chen was pronounced dead at the hospital at 4:02 a.m. Cause of death, alcohol poisoning and asphyxiation. If the paramedics had reached him even 3 minutes earlier, he might have survived. But we'll never know, will we? Jennifer was sobbing now, barely able to see the road. She pulled over to the curb, putting the car in park, her whole body shaking. I'm sorry, she gasped. I'm so sorry. I've thought about it every day since then. Every single day. I was scared and I made a mistake, and I'm sorry. She turned around to look at the woman directly, not through the mirror. The back seat was empty. The purse was still there, sitting on the seat where the woman had placed it. But there was no woman. Jennifer stared, her mind refusing to process what she was seeing. She reached back, fumbling for the door handle, and pushed the rear door open. Empty. The seat was cold to the touch, as if no one had been sitting there. But Jennifer's dash camera would have recorded everything. She grabbed her phone with trembling hands and pulled up the app that let her review the footage. She scrolled back to when she'd picked up the passenger at the Hawthorne address. The footage showed her car pulling up to the house, the rear passenger door opening. But no one got in. The door closed by itself. The footage showed her driving, occasionally glancing at the rearview mirror, even adjusting the temperature. It showed her speaking, pausing as if listening to responses. But the back seat was empty in every frame. She'd been talking to no one. Jennifer looked at the purse still sitting on the back seat. With a shaking hand, she reached back and picked it up. It was real, solid, heavier than she expected. She opened it. Inside was a wallet. She opened it and found a driver's license. The photo showed the woman who'd been in her car, or who Jennifer had seen in her car. The name read Margaret Cartwright. The address was the destination Jennifer had been driving to. There was also a death certificate, folded neatly. Margaret Cartwright, deceased, October 3rd, 2023. Exactly 1 year ago to the day. Cause of death, suicide. Jennifer's hands shook as she unfolded a newspaper clipping that was also in the purse. The headline read, Mother Takes Own Life. year after son's tragic death. The article described how Margaret Cartwright, whose son Tyler Chen had died from alcohol poisoning after a night out, had struggled with grief and guilt, believing she should have done more to help him with his drinking problem. Jennifer dropped the purse like it was burning her. She scrambled out of the car, standing on the empty street, gulping air. The car's rear door was still open, the interior light illuminating the empty back seat and the purse lying where she'd dropped it. Her phone buzzed. A notification from the taxi app. A new message from the passenger, M. Cartwright. "Thank you for completing the journey. The debt is noted, but not yet balanced. I'll be requesting your services again." Jennifer never drove for Yellow Star Taxi again. She turned in her car and her permit the next day, telling the company she was moving out of state. She didn't tell them the truth, that she couldn't risk another pickup, couldn't risk finding Margaret Cartwright waiting to get into her car again, because the message said, "Not yet balanced," which meant Margaret would come back. The debt wasn't paid. For months afterward, Jennifer would wake up at 3:18 a.m., the exact time she'd received the pickup request. She'd lie in bed, paralyzed with fear, listening for the sound of a car door opening, for a polite voice with a slight accent saying, "Thank you for coming so quickly." She moved to Seattle, got a job as a grocery store clerk, stayed off the roads at night entirely. But last week, her phone, which no longer had the taxi app installed, buzzed at 3:18 a.m. with a notification. A text from an unknown number. "Pickup requested. I'm still waiting to go home." Jennifer hasn't slept since. She knows eventually she'll have to answer. Debts must be paid, and Margaret Cartwright is very patient. She's been collecting for a long time, and she knows exactly where Jennifer is. The message comes every night now, at 3:18 a.m. Always the same. Pickup requested. And one night soon, Jennifer knows she'll look out her window and see a figure standing under the streetlight, carrying a small purse, waiting patiently to be driven home. Story 3. The Shadow Road. Marcus Webb drove long haul for Frontier Logistics, running the I-80 corridor between Sacramento and Reno, at least twice a week for the past 14 years. He was 51, divorced, and his Peterbilt 579 was more home to him than his studio apartment in Sparks, Nevada. He liked the solitude of the night drives, the steady rhythm of the road, and the way the darkness beyond his headlights made the rest of the world disappear. The long stretches through the Sierra Nevada mountains, especially the climb past Donner Pass, were his favorite, challenging enough to keep him alert, empty enough to feel like he had the whole world to himself. November 28th started like any other run. He'd loaded refrigerated cargo in West Sacramento at 9 p.m., medical supplies bound for a facility in Reno, and hit the road by 10:30. The weather was clear, temperature in the low 40s, no traffic to speak of once he got past Auburn. His CB radio was tuned to Channel 19, but it was mostly quiet, just occasional chatter from other truckers scattered across the highway. He had his usual playlist going, classic rock, volume low, and a thermos of coffee that would get him through the 4-hour drive. Everything was completely normal until mile marker 155, just past Emigrant Gap. That's where the road split. Marcus had driven this stretch hundreds of times. He knew every curve, every grade, every turnout. I-80 went one way here. There was no split, no fork, no alternate route. But at 12:47 a.m., his headlights illuminated something that shouldn't exist. A junction. To the left, I-80 continued as it always had. To the right, another highway branched off, marked with a green sign that read, "Alternate route, I-80 Shadow. Next exit, 78. Miles." Marcus eased off the accelerator, staring at the impossible fork in the road. His CB radio hissed with static. He grabbed the mic. "Breaker, breaker. Anyone got eyes on mile marker 155? Westbound lanes. Anyone else seeing this junction?" Only static answered him. He tried again, keying through different channels. Nothing but empty hiss. The highway split was getting closer. He had to make a decision, left on the normal I-80 or right onto the shadow route. Every instinct told him to stay left, maintain his normal course. But something else, a curiosity he'd later curse himself for indulging, made him ease the wheel to the right. Maybe it was a new, alternate route he hadn't heard about. Maybe construction had created a detour. Maybe he was more tired than he thought and was missing something obvious. The truck's tires hit the off-ramp, and Marcus committed to the turn. The road surface felt the same under his wheels. Good asphalt, well maintained. The shadow route curved away from I-80's normal path, heading deeper into the forest. Within 30 seconds, he'd lost sight of the regular highway completely. The first thing he noticed was the darkness. Not regular nighttime darkness, but something heavier, more absolute. His headlights seemed to penetrate less distance than normal, creating a smaller bubble of visibility. The second thing he noticed was the trees. They looked wrong. Too tall, too dense. Branches that reached over the road at angles that suggested they'd been growing that way for 100 years. But there was nothing natural about the arch they formed. Too symmetrical, too intentional. Marcus checked his GPS. The screen showed his truck as a blue dot in the middle of a blank gray space. No roads, no terrain features, no indication of where he was. His cell phone had no signal, not unusual in the mountains, but the lack of even searching for service was odd. The screen just showed a null symbol, like the phone had forgotten what cellular networks were. His headlights caught the next sign. I-80 shadow. Next exit. 76 miles. 76 miles. 2 miles from where he'd turned off. That was wrong. He'd been driving for at least 5 minutes, had to have covered more than 2 miles. Marcus checked his speedometer. He was doing 65, same as he'd been maintaining before the split. His odometer was still counting up normally, but according to the sign, he'd only progressed 2 miles. The CB radio crackled to life suddenly, making him jump. A voice, distorted and hollow, came through. "Shadow route traffic, be advised. Maintain your lane. Do not stop. Do not attempt to turn around. Proceed to exit. Repeat, do not stop." "Hello?" Marcus keyed the mic. "This is, Truck 447, Frontier Logistics. Who is this? What is this route?" The voice didn't acknowledge his question. It simply repeated, "Shadow route traffic, be advised. Maintain your lane. Do not stop. Do not attempt to turn around. Proceed to exit." Then static again. Marcus's hands were gripping the wheel tighter. Now. His heart rate had kicked up, and the coffee that had been sitting comfortably in his stomach now felt acidic and uncomfortable. He considered slowing down, finding a place to turn around. But the road was narrow here. Just 2 lanes with no shoulder. Trees pressing close on both sides. And the voice's warning repeated in his mind. Do not attempt to turn around. Miles passed. The signs counted down, but too slowly. After what felt like 20 minutes of driving, which should have been more than 20 miles at his speed, he passed a sign that read, "Next exit, 68 miles." The numbers were going down, but not nearly fast enough. His fuel gauge was dropping faster than it should. He'd started with 3/4 of a tank, enough to get to Reno easily with plenty to spare. But now the needle hovered near half. Impossible. Even accounting for the grade and elevation, He couldn't have burned that much fuel. Then he saw the other vehicles. They appeared in his headlights gradually, tail lights ahead, spaced out along the shadow route. Other trucks, cars, even what looked like an old RV, all moving at the same steady pace, all heading in the same direction. Marcus eased closer to the vehicle ahead of him, a Honda sedan. The license plate was from California, but the format was wrong. Numbers and letters in a sequence that didn't match any plate pattern he'd ever seen. He tried the CB again. "Anyone on this channel? This is Frontier 447. Can anyone hear me? Anyone else on this shadow route?" Silence at first. Then a different voice, younger, panicked. "Yes. Jesus Christ. Yes, I can hear you. How long have you been on this road?" "Maybe half an hour," Marcus said. "You?" "I don't know. Hours, maybe. I got on around Baxter, saw a junction that shouldn't be there. My phone's dead, my GPS is useless, and I've been following these cars ahead of me. The exit signs keep counting down, but it's taking forever." "Same here," Marcus said. "Stay on this channel. Let's keep talking." Okay, yeah. My name's Ryan. I'm in a Toyota Tacoma, gray. You can probably see me up ahead." Marcus looked but couldn't make out individual vehicles clearly enough in the darkness. "I'm in a Peterbilt, refrigerated trailer. I'm going to try to catch up to you." He pressed the accelerator, picking up speed to close the gap with the vehicles ahead. But something strange happened. He could feel the truck accelerating. The engine RPM increased. The speedometer climbed to 75. But the vehicles ahead didn't get any closer. They maintained the same distance, as if they were accelerating at the exact same rate to match him. He pushed harder, hitting 80, which was dangerously fast for a loaded truck on an unknown mountain road. The distance didn't change. The vehicles ahead remained exactly as far away as they'd been. Marcus eased back to 65, his heart hammering. "Ryan, you still there?" "Still here." "I tried to catch up. Couldn't. It's like the distance is fixed." "I know. I tried the same thing earlier. Tried to catch the cars ahead of me, tried to let them fall back. It doesn't change. We're all locked into these positions." The next sign read, "Next exit. 51 miles." Marcus did the math. He'd been on this road for at least 45 minutes. Even accounting for the strange distance compression, he should be approaching the exit soon. But 51 miles at this rate could mean hours more driving. "Ryan, tell me what you see ahead," Marcus said. "Describe the road." "Just more of the same. Trees, darkness, taillights ahead, signs every few miles. I haven't seen any other exits, no buildings, no side roads. Just this one highway going through the forest." "Yeah, same here." They drove in silence for a while. Just the CB hiss between them, both afraid to voice what they were starting to suspect. That the exit might not exist, that the numbers counting down were meaningless, that they might be driving this road forever. The fuel gauge hit a quarter tank. Marcus started to sweat despite the cold. "Ryan, what's your fuel situation?" A pause. "Not good. I had half a tank when I got on. Now I'm almost on empty. That doesn't make sense. I should have way more left." "Same here. We're burning fuel faster than we should. What happens when we run out?" Ryan's voice was tight with fear. "What happens if we stop?" Marcus remembered the warning from the radio. "Do not stop." "I don't know, but I don't think we want to find out." That's when he saw the first stopped vehicle. It was off to the side, barely visible in the tree line. A car, old model, hood up, completely dark. As his headlights swept past it, Marcus caught a glimpse of someone sitting in the driver's seat. The figure didn't move, didn't react to the light, just sat there, hands on the wheel, staring straight ahead. "Ryan, did you see that? The stopped car." "I saw it. Jesus, I saw it. There was someone in there. They weren't moving." "No." More stopped vehicles appeared as they continued. A pickup truck with its doors hanging open. A motorcycle lying on its side. A semi-truck, bigger than Marcus's, jackknifed across the shoulder. All of them had occupants, figures sitting or standing nearby, all motionless, all staring at the road with blank expressions. Marcus's fuel gauge hit empty. The low fuel warning light blazed on the dashboard. "Ryan, I'm on empty. How about you?" "Same." "Oh God, this is it, isn't it? We're going to run out and end up like them." No, there has to be a way out. There has to..." His engine coughed, sputtered. The truck lurched as fuel starvation kicked in. "It's happening," Marcus said, his voice surprisingly calm. "Engine's dying. Mine too. I'm losing power." Marcus's truck rolled slower, the engine barely running on fumes. Around him, all the other vehicles on the shadow route began slowing simultaneously, like a collective decision had been made. The tail lights ahead dimmed as engines failed one by one. The truck coasted to a stop. Marcus sat in the sudden silence, his hand still gripping the wheel. His headlights were still on, running on battery now, illuminating the empty road ahead. In his mirrors, he could see other vehicles stopped behind him, their headlights creating a chain of light stretching back into the darkness. The CB crackled, the same hollow voice from before. "Shadow route traffic, you have reached your destination. Please exit your vehicles. Proceed to integration." "Integration?" Marcus whispered. "What the hell does that mean?" The driver's door unlocked on its own. The electronic lock clicked loudly in the silence. Marcus's hand moved to the door handle involuntarily, like his body was obeying a command his brain hadn't issued. "No," he said out loud. "No, I'm not getting out." But his hand was already pulling the handle. The door swung open. Cold air rushed in, colder than it should be, cold enough to make his exposed skin burn. "Ryan," Marcus managed to say into the CB mic. "Ryan, don't get out. Whatever you do, don't." His legs moved, swinging out of the cab. His feet found the step, then the ground. He was standing beside his truck, and he couldn't remember deciding to get out. Other drivers were emerging from their vehicles, shadowy figures in the darkness, all moving with the same involuntary motion, all walking toward the tree line, where the stopped vehicles and their occupants waited. Marcus tried to fight it, tried to turn around and climb back into his truck, but his body kept walking forward, toward the trees, toward the waiting figures. And that's when Ryan's voice screamed over the CB radio, echoing from all the stopped vehicles. "The exit! There's an exit! Look at the trees!" Marcus's eyes focused. There, barely visible through the wall of forest, was a gap, a break in the trees. And beyond it, impossible to see but somehow felt, was the real I-80, the normal highway, the world he'd left behind. The exit wasn't ahead on the road. It was through the trees. Marcus forced his legs to turn, to break the forward momentum pulling him toward integration. Every muscle screamed in protest, like he was moving through thick mud. But he turned. He started walking toward the gap in the trees. Behind him, the hollow voice boomed from every CB radio. "Return to the route. Return to integration. You cannot leave." Other drivers were trying to follow Marcus's lead, turning from the road, stumbling toward the tree line. Some made it a few steps before they froze, their bodies locked in place. Others collapsed, unable to fight whatever force was compelling them forward. Marcus pushed through the gap in the trees. Branches tore at his clothes, his face. The cold intensified to a burning ice that made his lungs ache. He could see the real highway ahead now, see headlights of normal traffic flowing past, completely unaware of the shadow route existing parallel to their path. He broke through the tree line and collapsed onto the shoulder of I-80. Real I-80. A normal truck blasted past him, horn blaring at the figure that had just stumbled out of the woods. Marcus lay there, gasping, his whole body shaking. He looked back at the trees. The gap was still there, and through it, he could see the shadow route. His truck sitting abandoned, other vehicles scattered along the dark highway, figures still walking towards something in the deeper darkness. Ryan stumbled through the gap a moment later, falling beside Marcus. Then a few others, a woman in her 60s, a young couple holding hands, a man in a business suit. Maybe 10 people total managed to break free before the gap in the trees sealed itself, the branches growing together like they'd never been parted. The shadow route was gone. Just dark forest remained. CHP picked them up 20 minutes later, after Marcus flagged down a passing car. They found all the escaped drivers disoriented, hypothermic, and unable to provide consistent accounts of where they'd been. Search and rescue teams went into the forest, but found no highway, no vehicles, nothing. Marcus's truck was discovered 3 days later in a ravine 15 miles off I-80, near an old logging road. It had rolled off what looked like an abandoned roadway that wasn't on any maps. The fuel tank was empty. Inside the trailer, the medical supplies had spoiled, as if they'd been sitting unrefrigerated for weeks instead of one night. Marcus doesn't drive long haul anymore. He can't. Because sometimes, at night when he's trying to sleep, he hears the CB radio voice. Shadow route traffic, be advised. Maintain your lane. Do not stop. Do not attempt to turn around. Proceed to exit. And he knows the shadow route is still out there, running parallel to I-80, waiting for the next driver to see the junction and choose the wrong fork in the road. Story 4. The Empty Load. Cassandra Cass. Monroe worked flatbed freight for Iron Horse Logistics out of Tulsa, Oklahoma. She'd been hauling for 9 years, specializing in oversized loads, construction equipment, prefab buildings, industrial machinery, the kind of freight that required permits and escort vehicles and careful planning. At 36, she was one of the few women running flatbeds in her region, and she'd earned respect through skill and consistency. She knew how to secure a load properly, how to handle the physics of 40 tons of machinery at 60 miles per hour, and how to navigate the bureaucracy of permits and regulations. The job that changed everything came through dispatch on December 11th. A priority load, overnight delivery from Tulsa to Little Rock, Arkansas. The cargo was listed as specialized agricultural equipment, bound for a research facility. The paperwork was strange, mostly redacted, with just basic details about weight distribution and dimensions. But the pay was exceptional, nearly triple her usual rate for a comparable run, and priority loads usually meant government or military contracts, where heavy redaction was standard. Cass arrived at the pickup location at 7 p.m., a warehouse complex on the outskirts of Tulsa that she'd never been to before. The facility was surrounded by high fencing, security cameras, and a manned gate. She showed her credentials and delivery order, and after a 10-minute wait and several phone calls, they waved her through. The warehouse was massive, mostly empty, with loading docks designed for freight much larger than her trailer. A forklift operator was waiting, along with a man in a dark suit who introduced himself as the security coordinator, without providing a name. The cargo was already on a pallet, a large crate, approximately 8 feet by 8 feet by 10 feet high, covered in a heavy tarp and secured with steel bands. "Weight?" Cass asked, walking around it to assess the load. 4,000 pounds, the suited man said. "Within your capacity." "What's inside?" "Classified. You're transporting the container, not the contents. Your responsibility is secure transport and timely delivery. You don't open it, don't inspect it, don't photograph it. Clear." Cass had hauled classified loads before. This wasn't unusual for government work. "Clear. I need to verify the weight and secure it properly. Use the weight on the manifest. Don't open the crate. Once it's loaded, you drive straight through, no stops except for fuel. You'll be provided a route. Follow it exactly." Something about the man's tone made Cass's instincts prickle. But she'd come this far. The forklift loaded the crate onto her flatbed. She personally secured it with chains and straps, checking tension and anchor points. When she was satisfied it wouldn't shift during transport, she did her final walk-around inspection. That's when she noticed something odd. She placed her hand on the crate to check one of the straps, and the metal felt warm. Not hot, just warmer than it should be, for something that had been sitting in an unheated warehouse. And there was a subtle vibration, barely perceptible, like a very slow heartbeat. "It's powered equipment," the suited man said, appearing beside her without a sound. "Internal battery system. The vibration is normal. Now, please proceed to your route." He handed her a printed itinerary, specific highways, specific route numbers, with notations about avoiding certain roads and cities. The route was longer than necessary, adding almost 2 hours to what should be a 5-hour drive by taking back roads and avoiding interstates in several sections. Cass took the itinerary and climbed into her cab. As she pulled out of the facility, she checked her mirrors. The suited man stood watching her leave, phone to his ear, his expression unreadable. The first 2 hours were normal. She followed the designated route, which took her south on Highway 75, then east on various state highways. Traffic was light, weather clear and cold. She stopped once for fuel at a truck stop near Okmulgee, as instructed on the itinerary. The fuel stop had been prearranged. The attendant seemed to be expecting her, charged the fuel to an account she wasn't familiar with, and waved her through without the usual small talk. Around 10 p.m., she crossed into Arkansas on Highway 271. This was a remote stretch, 2-lane road through the Ouachita National Forest, with almost no traffic at night. Her headlights carved through the darkness, illuminating the occasional deer or fox crossing the road. The CB was quiet except for distant chatter she could barely make out. That's when she heard the sound from the load, a metallic scraping, like something sliding inside the crate. Then a thump, then silence. Cass's eyes went to her mirrors, checking the flatbed behind her. The crate was still secured, straps tight, no visible movement. But she'd heard something, she was certain. Another thump, louder this time, definitely from inside the crate. She grabbed her CB mic. "Breaker, breaker, this is flatbed hauler southbound on 271. Anyone monitoring this channel?" No response. She tried her cell phone. No signal, which wasn't surprising out here. She considered pulling over to inspect the load, but the security coordinator's words echoed in her mind. "Drive straight through. Don't stop, except for fuel." A third thump, harder than the others. The whole crate seemed to shift slightly, and Cass felt it through the truck's frame. Whatever was inside was moving, and it was heavy enough to make 4,000 pounds of cargo shift, despite the chains and straps she'd secured. The vibration she'd felt earlier intensified. She could feel it through the steering wheel now, a steady pulse that matched no engine frequency or road pattern. It was coming from the crate. Her rearview mirror showed something that made her blood run cold. The tarp covering the crate was moving, not flapping in the wind. There was barely any wind on this calm night. It was bulging outward, as if something inside was pushing against the walls of the crate. Cass accelerated, pushing the truck faster than she should on this winding road. Her mind raced through possibilities. Live cargo. They wouldn't ship live animals in a locked crate without ventilation. Mechanical equipment malfunctioning. Possible, but why the secrecy? Her instincts, honed through years of knowing when something about a load wasn't right, screamed at her to pull over and check, to call someone, to do anything except keep driving with whatever was in that crate, slowly fighting its way out. But the itinerary was explicit. No stops. And the security coordinator had been equally explicit about not opening the container. The thumping became rhythmic. Boom, boom, boom. Like something striking the inside of the crate with methodical determination. Each impact was stronger than the last. A horrible thought occurred to Cass. What if it wasn't equipment? What if she was transporting something else, something alive, something that shouldn't be locked in a crate? Human trafficking victims, imprisoned and dying from lack of air. That thought made her decision. She pulled over to the shoulder, put on her hazards, and grabbed her flashlight. She'd rather face legal consequences for opening classified cargo than deliver a crate full of dead people. She climbed out of the cab, flashlight in hand, and approached the flatbed. The thumping had stopped the moment she parked, replaced by complete silence. The crate sat still, tarp no longer moving. The chains and straps were tight, everything secured as it should be. "Hello?" she called out, feeling ridiculous. "If there's someone in there, make a sound. I'm going to get you out." Silence. Cass moved closer, placing her hand on the crate again. Still warm, still that faint vibration. She found the edge of the tarp and pulled it back slightly, exposing the corner of the crate. It was unmarked metal, no labels, no hazard warnings, no identification of any kind. She moved to the side where the latch would be if this was a standard shipping container. She'd have to cut the security bands to open it, which would be obvious evidence of tampering. But if there were people inside... Her hand reached for the bolt cutters she kept in her toolbox. That's when the suited man's voice came from behind her. "Ms. Monroe, I strongly advise you to get back in your truck." Cass spun around, flashlight raised. The suited man stood 20 feet away, having materialized from nowhere. Behind him were two vehicles, black SUVs with government plates. "How did you... We're in the middle of nowhere. How are you here?" "The load is being monitored. When you stopped, we were notified. Now please, get back in your truck and continue to the delivery point. You have 2 more hours of driving." "There's something alive in there," Cass said, keeping her flashlight beam on him. "I heard it moving. If there are people trapped inside..." "There are no people inside. What's inside is secure and poses no threat if left undisturbed. Opening the container would be extremely unwise." "Then what is it?" The suited man's expression didn't change. "That information is classified. Your job is transport, not interrogation. You've been paid well to ask no questions and follow instructions. I suggest you honor that agreement." One of the SUVs pulled closer, and 2 more men got out. They weren't holding weapons, but the implication was clear. Cass felt trapped. She could refuse, could insist on opening the crate, could call the police if she had cell service. But what would she actually accomplish? She'd be breached her contract, possibly faced legal action. And these men didn't look like they'd just let her walk away. "Fine," she said. "But if I'm delivering something dangerous, something that could hurt people, that's on you." "Noted," the suited man said, without a trace of concern. Cass got back, in her truck, her hands shaking with anger and fear. She pulled back onto the highway, watching in her mirrors as the SUVs followed at a distance, their headlights maintaining steady surveillance. The rest of the drive was silent. No more thumping, no more movement. Whatever was in the crate had gone still, as if it knew it was being watched, as if it understood that escape was no longer possible. She reached the delivery point at 1:30 a.m. Another anonymous facility, this one outside Little Rock. The gate opened before she even announced herself. Men in coveralls guided her to a specific bay. A specialized crane was already in position, ready to lift the crate off her flatbed. The suited man appeared again as they unloaded the cargo. "Your payment will be deposited tonight. The NDA you signed covers everything you saw, heard, or experienced during this transport. Violation will result in severe legal consequences. Are we clear?" "Crystal," Cass said, wanting nothing more than to leave. As the crane lifted the crate, she saw something that made her stomach drop. The bottom of the crate, the part that had been sitting on her flatbed, was dented outward, not inward, as if something heavy had pressed down on it. Outward, as if something inside had been pushing against it, trying to force its way through the floor. The dents were shaped like handprints, dozens of them, each one larger than a human hand, with 6 fingers instead of 5. Cass didn't wait to see more. She climbed into her cab and drove out of the facility, not stopping until she was 2 states away. The payment appeared in her account as promised. Along with it was a message from Iron Horse Logistics. Future classified loads are available at similar compensation rates. Reply to confirm interest. Cass never replied. She sold her truck 3 weeks later and took a job dispatching from an office. She doesn't haul freight anymore, doesn't go near cargo facilities, doesn't ask questions when she sees unmarked trucks on the highway at night. But sometimes, lying awake at 3 a.m., she hears it. The thumping, the rhythmic boom, boom, boom of something trapped, something strong, something wrong, trying to break free from its container. And she wonders how many other drivers have hauled similar loads, how many of those loads actually made it to their destinations, and how many are still out there, being transported through the night, containing things that shouldn't exist. The classified contract offers still come, appearing in her email every few months, always from different addresses, always with the same message. Priority load available, exceptional compensation, no questions asked. Cass deletes them immediately, because she knows now that some cargo isn't worth any amount of money, and because late at night, when she's alone, she can still feel that vibration through her fingertips. The pulse of something alien and aware, locked in a crate, being moved through the darkness to destinations unknown. Story 5. The Last Pickup. Thomas Kern drove for Memorial Transit, a specialized medical transport company based in Phoenix, Arizona. His job was different from typical ambulance work. He transported non-emergency patients between facilities, handled organ transport runs, and occasionally moved medical equipment or supplies that required temperature control and careful handling. He'd been doing it for 7 years, and at 48, he'd seen most of what the job had to offer. Terminally ill patients making their final transfers to hospice, confused elderly people being moved between care homes, even the occasional deceased person being transported to the county morgue when the regular services were backed up. What he'd never experienced was a pickup request, like the one he received on January 9th at 11:43 p.m. Thomas was at the Memorial Transit Station, catching up on paperwork between calls, when dispatch forwarded him a priority request. The message was marked urgent, originated from Mercy General Hospital downtown, and the patient information was minimal. Patient requires immediate transfer to Desert Ridge Extended Care. Non-responsive, stable. Priority 1. Priority 1 meant move immediately, no delays. Thomas grabbed his keys and headed to the garage where his transport van was parked. A white Mercedes Sprinter fitted out with a gurney, medical monitoring equipment, and climate control. The address for Desert Ridge Extended Care was familiar. He'd done runs there before. Decent facility, good staff, about a 40-minute drive north of Phoenix proper. He arrived at Mercy General's loading dock at 12:15 a.m. The dock was usually busy, even at night, with ambulances and transport vehicles coming and going. But tonight it was deserted, except for a single nurse standing under the dock lights, and a gurney beside her with a covered form. Thomas backed the van into position and got out. "I'm Thomas Kern, Memorial Transit. I've got a priority pickup for Desert Ridge." The nurse nodded. She was young, maybe mid-20s, and looked exhausted. Her badge read Sarah Holt, RN. She glanced at the covered gurney with an expression Thomas couldn't quite read. Not distress exactly, but discomfort, maybe unease. "Patient's been prepped for transport," Sarah said. "He's non-responsive, but vitals are stable. We've got him on a maintenance IV. No special monitoring required during transport." Thomas did his standard checks: patient identification band, transfer paperwork, medication list. The ID band showed a name, Robert Halford, age 73, and a medical record number. The paperwork was in order, signed by the attending physician. Everything looked routine. "What's his condition?" Thomas asked, preparing to transfer the patient to his van's gurney. "End-stage neurological degeneration," Sarah said. "He's been non-responsive for 6 days. Family decided on comfort care at the extended facility, rather than continued treatment here." "Has he got family with him? Anyone riding along?" "No. They'll meet him at Desert Ridge." Thomas had transferred hundreds of patients. This was standard procedure for end-of-life care. He released the brake on the hospital gurney and began wheeling it toward his van. Sarah helped him navigate the small ramp and secure the gurney into the van's locking system. The patient remained motionless under the sheet, just a still form beneath white fabric. "Anything else I need to know?" Thomas asked as he completed the transfer checklist. Sarah hesitated, then shook her head. "No. Just get him there quickly, okay?" There was something in her voice, a note of urgency that seemed out of proportion for a stable patient transfer. But Thomas had learned not to read too much into medical staff's moods. They dealt with stress he couldn't imagine. He climbed into the driver's seat and pulled away from Mercy General, the patient secured in the back. The route to Desert Ridge took him north through Phoenix's sprawling suburbs, then into the newer developments on the city's fringe. At this hour, traffic was minimal. Everything was fine for the first 15 minutes. Thomas drove carefully, avoiding sudden acceleration or braking that might jostle his patient. The van's climate control kept the interior at a comfortable 70 degrees. In his rearview mirror, he could see the gurney, the covered form still and silent. Then, at a red light on Greenway Road, he heard movement from the back. A rustling sound, like fabric sliding against fabric. Thomas glanced at the rearview mirror. The sheet had moved slightly, but that could be from the van's motion. He'd just turned a corner. The light changed. He continued north. Another rustle, more pronounced. And then something that made his skin prickle. A sigh. Long, slow, like someone sleeping deeply and shifting positions. Thomas's eyes went to the mirror again. The sheet was definitely moving now, the form beneath it shifting subtly. But the patient was supposed to be non-responsive. 6 days of zero consciousness, according to the nurse. "Mr. Halford," Thomas called back. "Sir, if you can hear me, we're taking you to Desert Ridge, about 20 minutes away. You're safe." No response. Just another sigh, followed by a sound that might have been a word, too muffled to make out. Thomas considered pulling over to check on the patient, but they were on a busy road with no safe shoulder. He'd wait until he could find a parking lot or pull off. In the meantime, if the patient was regaining consciousness, that was actually good news. Except something felt wrong. The sounds coming from the back weren't like someone waking up from unconsciousness. They were rhythmic, deliberate, and getting louder. At the next red light, Thomas unfastened his seatbelt and turned around to look directly at the patient, not through the mirror. The sheet was moving with steady respiration now. Deep breaths, too deep, like the patient was hyperventilating. The form beneath the sheet seemed larger than it had been, as if the body was swelling. "Mr. Halford, I'm going to pull over and check on you, okay?" He saw a parking lot ahead, a closed grocery store. He pulled in and put the van in park, leaving the engine running. He grabbed his flashlight and opened the sliding door to the cargo area. The sheet was rising and falling with each breath. Too much movement for someone who'd been non-responsive. Thomas reached forward and carefully pulled back the sheet to check the patient's face. The man beneath had his eyes closed, but his face was wrong. The features matched the photo on the ID band: balding head, thin face, age-appropriate wrinkles. But the skin was too pale, almost gray, and the expression was strange. Not peaceful like an unconscious person, not pained like someone in distress. It was neutral in a way that seemed unnatural, like a mask or a mannequin. Thomas checked the IV line, still flowing correctly. He felt for a pulse at the wrist, strong and steady, but the skin was cold to touch, too cold. The patient's eyes opened. They moved beneath the lids first, rapid eye movement like REM sleep, and then the lids snapped open with an unnatural suddenness. The eyes were wrong. They were the right color, hazel, matching the photo ID. But they didn't focus. They stared straight up at nothing, pupils dilated fully despite the flashlight beam Thomas was holding. "Mr. Halford," Thomas said quietly, his mouth suddenly dry. The patient's mouth opened. The jaw lowered smoothly, too smoothly, until it gaped wider than should be anatomically possible. And from inside came that sound again, but clearer now. Words. Not spoken, but whispered in multiple voices at once, overlapping like a badly tuned radio receiving several stations simultaneously. "Not Halford. Not anymore." Thomas jerked backward, hitting his head on the van's doorframe. The patient, or whatever was wearing the patient's form, sat up on the gurney. The movement was wrong, bending at points that shouldn't bend, joints moving in directions they shouldn't move. The IV line pulled free, fluid dripping onto the floor. "Jesus Christ," Thomas gasped, scrambling backward out of the van. The thing sat upright on the gurney, head turning to track Thomas's movement. The eyes still didn't focus properly, but they followed him. The mouth closed, then opened again, and this time only one voice came out, clearer, almost conversational. "We need to reach Desert Ridge. You need to drive us there." "What are you?" Thomas managed to ask, his back against his driver's door. We are passengers. Robert Halford was a host, a dying host. We've been transferred to continue. Desert Ridge has others like him, others who are ending. We will transfer again. It's the agreement. Agreement? What agreement? The hospital knows. They've always known. When certain patients reach the end, when consciousness fades permanently, we move in. We preserve the body, keep it functioning. And when the family consents to transfer to extended care, they're really consenting to give us passage. Desert Ridge is a way station for us. Thomas's mind reeled. This couldn't be real. Hallucination from fatigue, carbon monoxide in the van, something. But the thing sitting on his gurney was undeniably real, moving with liquid grace as it swung its legs over the side, feet finding the van floor. "We mean no harm," it said with Robert Halford's mouth. "We only need transportation. We cannot drive ourselves. We cannot exist outside a host for long. Please, complete the transfer. You'll be compensated. You'll forget this. They always do." "I'm calling the police," Thomas said, reaching for his phone. "You'll find you have no signal," the thing said, and it was right. Thomas's phone showed 0 bars, even though they were in the middle of Phoenix. "What happens if I refuse to drive you?" The thing's expression shifted, and for the first time, something like emotion crossed the face. Sadness, maybe, or pity. Then, Robert Halford's body dies in this parking lot. We vacate. We find another host, perhaps less willingly given. And you spend the rest of your life wondering if you imagined this. The mind is good at creating rational explanations for impossible events. You'll convince yourself it was stress, exhaustion. But you'll never be certain. Thomas stood there, trapped between impossible choices. Every instinct screamed at him to run, to leave the van, to call someone, anyone. But part of him, the part that had spent 7 years doing this job, that had developed a strange detachment necessary for medical transport work, that part was curious. And that part whispered, "If this is real, if this is happening, what does it mean?" How many times had he transported patients who weren't patients at all? How many facilities were way stations for these things? "If I drive you," Thomas said slowly, "will you answer my questions?" The thing considered this, head tilting. "Some, not all. Some knowledge is dangerous. And after I drop you at Desert Ridge, you'll be paid. You'll go home. Over the following weeks, the memory will fade. You'll remember this night as routine. That's how it works. The mind protects itself." Thomas made a decision he'd question for the rest of his life. He got back in the driver's seat. "Get back on the gurney. I'll take you to Desert Ridge." The thing smiled with Robert Halford's face. It was the most disturbing thing Thomas had seen yet. A genuine expression of gratitude on a face that shouldn't be capable of expression. It climbed back onto the gurney and pulled the sheet up to its chest, settling in like a normal patient. Thomas drove. The route took 40 minutes that felt like hours. He asked questions. The thing answered some. It claimed to be one of many. A collective consciousness that needed physical form to exist in this reality. They'd made agreements long ago with certain medical institutions, a symbiotic relationship. Dying patients whose brains had shut down, but whose bodies could still be maintained, became hosts. The consciousness moved in, kept the body alive, and used it to travel between facilities. Eventually, when the body decayed beyond use, they'd transfer again. "Why?" Thomas asked. "Why do you need to move around?" "We're searching," the thing said, "for something we lost, or perhaps for something we hope to find. It's difficult to explain in terms you'd understand. We experience time differently. We've been searching for a very long time." They arrived at Desert Ridge at 1:47 a.m. The facility looked normal. A modern extended care building, well lit, professional. But as Thomas pulled up to the receiving entrance, he noticed there were no other vehicles in the lot. No staff visible through the windows. Just a single door, propped open, waiting. "Wheel us inside," the thing said, "to room 17. Then leave. Your part is complete." Thomas did as instructed, his body moving on autopilot. He wheeled the gurney through the silent facility. The hallways were empty but clean, recently maintained. Room 17's door was open. Inside were 3 beds, all occupied. 3 patients, all with that same grey pallor, all with eyes open and unfocused, all breathing in the same rhythm. "Thank you, Thomas," the thing wearing Robert Halford said, as he positioned the gurney alongside the other beds. "You've been kind. That's rare." "Will I really forget?" Thomas asked. "Most do. Some remember. It depends on the person. If you remember, you'll have a choice to make. You can speak of this and be dismissed as delusional, or you can keep silent and wonder. Either way, you'll be compensated well enough to ease the burden." Thomas left. He drove back to Memorial Transit Station, completed his paperwork mechanically, and went home. He slept deeply, dreamlessly. When he woke the next day, he had a vague memory of an unusual transfer but couldn't recall specifics. Over the following weeks, details faded exactly as the thing had predicted. He remembered it as a routine night, nothing special. But 6 months later, Thomas received a direct deposit into his bank account, $50,000 from an unnamed source. And with the money came a resurgence of memories, clear, detailed, unmistakable. He remembered everything. Thomas still works for Memorial Transit, but he's made changes. He's requested to be taken off the Desert Ridge route. He doesn't ask questions when dispatch assigns him specific transfers late at night. And when he picks up patients who seem a little too still, who breathe a little too rhythmically, who look at him with eyes that don't quite focus, he drives them where they need to go and doesn't look back. Because he understands now. The city is full of waypoints, full of places where the dying become homes for the searching. And his job isn't really about transporting patients. It's about transporting passengers. Passengers who've been riding in human bodies for longer than he can imagine, searching for something they've lost, moving endlessly through the night from one host to the next. And every few months, another $50,000 appears in his account. Payment for silence, payment for service, payment for being the driver who doesn't ask questions, who completes the transfers, who keeps the waypoints connected. Thomas has become part of the agreement, whether he wants to be or not. And late at night, alone in his van between calls, he wonders, when his time comes, when his consciousness fades, and his body is just a shell, will he become a host too? Will something move in, take the wheel, and continue the search? He suspects the answer is yes. The agreement includes everyone eventually. We're all just passengers, waiting for our final transfer. Story 6. The Phantom Fare. Elena Vasquez drove for Rapid Response Courier, a small independent delivery service in Seattle, Washington, that specialized in same-day and emergency deliveries. At 34, she'd been with the company for 5 years, working primarily evening and night shifts when traffic was lighter and the pay differential was better. She drove a company cargo van, a white Ford Transit with the company logo on the sides, and her routes covered everything from legal document deliveries to medication runs to specialty food transport for high-end restaurants. Her job was straightforward. Receive delivery assignments through the company app, pick up the items, deliver them to the specified address, get a signature confirmation, and move on to the next job. She'd done thousands of deliveries, built a reputation for speed and reliability, and knew Seattle's streets better than she knew her own apartment. The delivery request that came through on February 23rd at 10:37 p.m. seemed standard at first. The pickup location was a residential address in the Fremont neighborhood, north of downtown. The item was listed as personal documents and belongings, weight less than 20 pounds, destination and address in Ballard. The customer name showed as K. Morrison, and there was a note. Please handle with care. Time sensitive. Ring doorbell upon arrival. Elena confirmed the pickup and drove to the Fremont address, a narrow side street lined with older homes and large trees that blocked most of the streetlight. The house was a small bungalow, dark except for a porch light. She parked in front, grabbed her delivery scanner and clipboard, and walked up to the door. She rang the doorbell. No answer. She waited 30 seconds and rang again. Still nothing. She tried knocking, calling out, "Rapid response courier delivery," but the house remained silent. This happened occasionally. Customers ordered a pickup and then weren't home, or fell asleep, or forgot. Protocol was to call the customer through the app. Elena pulled out her phone and initiated the call. It rang 4 times, then connected. But instead of a voice, Elena heard static. Thick, heavy static, with something underneath it. Not quite words, more like the rhythm of speech without the actual sounds. She pulled the phone away from her ear, checked the connection. It showed active, the call timer counting up. "Hello?" Elena said into the phone. "This is Rapid Response Courier. I'm at your pickup location, but there's no answer at the door." The static shifted, and for just a moment, she thought she heard a voice. Waiting. Inside. The call disconnected. Elena looked at the dark house. Protocol said if the customer wasn't available after attempted contact, she should mark the delivery as unsuccessful and move on. But something made her hesitate. The voice in the static, if it had been a voice, sounded distant, weak. What if the customer was elderly or injured or needed help? She tried the door handle, unlocked. It swung open easily, revealing a dark entryway. "Hello," Elena called from the threshold. "Mr. or Ms. Morrison, this is your courier. Your door was unlocked and I heard you on the phone. Are you okay?" No response, but she heard movement deeper in the house. A shuffling sound, like someone walking slowly across a wooden floor. Elena made a decision. She stepped inside, leaving the door open behind her, keeping her phone ready to call 911 if needed. "I'm coming in to check on you. If you need medical help, say something." The house was cold inside, colder than it should be. Her breath misted slightly in the air. The shuffling sound continued, coming from what looked like a living room ahead. Elena fumbled for a light switch, found one, flicked it up. Nothing happened. Power off, or the bulb was dead. She used her phone's flashlight, sweeping the beam across the entryway. The house was furnished but looked abandoned. Dust on every surface, mail piled up on a side table, the air stale and undisturbed. Her light found a calendar on the wall, showing July of the previous year, 6 months out of date. "Mr. Morrison? Miss Morrison?" The shuffling stopped. In the silence, Elena heard breathing. Not her own, someone else's, coming from the living room. Slow, labored breathing. She moved forward, phone light leading the way, every instinct screaming at her to leave, but her concern for a potentially injured person overriding her fear. She stepped into the living room and swept her light across the space. A figure sat in an armchair facing away from her, toward a dark television. The silhouette was of a person, motionless now, just that slow breathing continuing. "Sir, ma'am, I'm Elena from Rapid Response. Are you all right?" The figure didn't turn, but a voice came from it, flat and hollow. "The delivery. It's ready. Take it." On a table beside the chair sat a box, small, maybe 10 inches square, wrapped in brown paper and tied with string. There was a label on it with the Ballard address printed in neat handwriting. Elena's courier training kicked in. "Okay, I'll take the package. Can you sign the confirmation form?" "Already signed," the voice said. "Look." Elena approached the table, keeping the figure in the corner of her vision. There was a paper beside the box, a delivery confirmation form, completely filled out and signed. The signature was illegible, just a scrawl, but the date was today's date, and the time was listed as 10:45 p.m. But that was impossible. It was 10:45 right now, and she'd just arrived. "How did you take the delivery?" the voice interrupted. "It must reach the destination. It's been waiting too long." Elena picked up the box. It was heavier than she expected, and warm to the touch. Not just warm, hot, like something inside was generating heat. She could feel something shifting inside as she lifted it, a sliding sensation, like liquid moving. "What's in here?" she asked. "What needs to be delivered?" the figure said. "What's been waiting?" "I need to see your face," Elena said, her voice shaking now. "I need to verify you're the customer." "I'm not the customer. I'm the messenger, the sender, the one who waited too long and now can only send." The figure began to turn in the chair, the movement slow and wrong, joints bending at angles that made Elena's stomach lurch. She didn't want to see the face. Every part of her screamed that she shouldn't see the face. She ran, grabbed the box and ran back through the dark house, out the open door, to her van. She threw the box into the cargo area, slammed the door, and got into the driver's seat with shaking hands. The house's front door was still open, light from her van's interior, illuminating the entryway. But nothing emerged, no figure followed. Elena sat there, breath coming in gasps, trying to calm down. She looked at her phone. The delivery app showed the pickup as completed, with a timestamp of 10:45 p.m. and a signature confirmation already uploaded. But she hadn't scanned anything, hadn't taken a photo, hadn't done any of the normal confirmation steps. She should call the police. Should report that something was wrong with that house, that someone or something was inside. But what would she say? That a person sitting in a chair gave her a package and spooked her? That the house was cold and dark? She looked at the delivery address in Ballard, a residential street about a 20-minute drive. The app listed it as a priority delivery, needed by midnight. Against her better judgment, Elena decided to complete the delivery. Get the box to its destination, get rid of it, and then decide what to report about the pickup. She pulled away from the Fremont house and drove toward Ballard, checking her rearview mirror repeatedly to make sure nothing was following her. The box in the back of her van made sounds during the drive. Subtle movements, like something inside was settling or shifting. And that heat, she could feel it, radiating through the cargo area into the cab, making the whole van uncomfortably warm despite the February cold outside. At a red light, Elena turned around to look at the box. It sat where she'd placed it, but the brown paper wrapping looked different now. Darker in places, like something was seeping through from inside. And the string binding it was pulled tighter, cutting into the paper, as if whatever was inside was expanding. The light changed. Elena drove faster, wanting this delivery done, wanting the box out of her van. She reached the Ballard address at 11:14 p.m. A small apartment building, 4 stories, reasonably maintained. The address specified Apartment 3B. Elena grabbed the box from the cargo area, flinching at how hot it had become, and carried it into the building. The lobby was empty, mailboxes along one wall showing the names of residents. 3B's mailbox had a label, Morrison, the same last name as the pickup customer. Elena climbed the stairs to the 3rd floor. Apartment 3B was at the end of the hallway. She approached the door and raised her hand to knock, then noticed the door was already ajar, open about an inch. "Hello? Delivery for Morrison?" No answer. Elena pushed the door open wider and looked inside. The apartment was dark, but she could make out a furnished living space. And sitting in a chair facing the door, exactly as if waiting for her, was a figure. Elena's blood froze. The figure was motionless, backlit by a window, face obscured in shadow. But the posture was identical to the figure in the Fremont house. Same chair, same position, same sense of wrongness. "Your delivery," Elena said, her voice barely above a whisper. "Should I leave it inside?" "Bring it to me," the figure said. The voice was flat, hollow, exactly like the voice from the pickup house. Elena took one step into the apartment, then another. Every survival instinct screamed at her to drop the box and run, but something else, curiosity, duty, or some compulsion she didn't understand, made her move forward. She reached the figure and placed the box on a table beside the chair, identical to the setup at the pickup location. "Delivery complete," Elena said. "I need a signature." "Look at me," the figure said. "I don't need to," Elena said quickly. "I can just mark it as delivered and... Look at me. You need to see. You need to understand what you've been carrying." Against her will, Elena's eyes lifted to look at the figure's face. It was her own face. Older, gaunt, with hollow eyes and skin like wax, but unmistakably her. The figure smiled with Elena's mouth and spoke with Elena's voice, aged and strained. "I'm you," it said, "from the end. This is the delivery I need you to make. This box, every time, different address, same delivery. The box contains what's left of me, of us, and you need to keep delivering it until you reach the end too." "That's not possible," Elena whispered. "That's not. You'll understand when you're ready. The deliveries will continue. You'll receive requests. Always a pickup from an empty house. Always a delivery to an empty apartment. Always the same box. And each time, you'll carry what's left of the previous version forward. It's the only way to close the loop. The only way to complete what needs completing." Elena stumbled backward, away from the figure, away from her own face staring at her from that chair. She ran from the apartment, down the stairs, out to her van. She drove without direction, just drove, until she found herself parked at Gasworks Park, on the north shore of Lake Union, the city lights reflected on the dark water. She checked her phone. The delivery showed as completed, signed, confirmed. But there was already a new delivery request waiting. Pickup from a different Fremont address, delivery to a different Ballard address. Same customer name, K. Morrison. Same note. Please handle with care. Time sensitive. Elena declined the delivery. Immediately, another request appeared. Same details. She declined again. Another appeared. This continued for 5 minutes. Every time she declined, a new request generated instantly. Always the same delivery. Always K. Morrison. Always that impossible route. Finally, she accepted it. The moment she did, the repeating requests stopped. Her phone showed one active delivery, pickup in 40 minutes. That was 8 weeks ago. Elena still drives for Rapid Response Courier. But now, 3 or 4 times a week, she gets a delivery request from K. Morrison. The The pickup locations vary, always empty houses. The delivery locations vary, always empty apartments. The box is always the same, wrapped in brown paper, tied with string, warm to the touch, with something inside that shifts and moves. And sometimes, at the delivery point, she sees herself sitting in a chair in a dark room, older each time, decaying, waiting at the end of a loop that she doesn't understand but can't escape. She's tried to break the pattern, tried refusing the deliveries for days at a time, tried calling the police, tried bringing friends to witness the pickups. But the deliveries always resume. The requests keep coming. And if she ignores them too long, she starts to feel herself fading, becoming less solid, as if she's the one who's not quite real. Elena has come to understand that the deliveries aren't about transporting a package. They're about maintaining something, keeping some impossible loop closed, preventing something from unraveling. She's become the courier between versions of herself, carrying the remains of who she'll be forward through impossible geography and time, delivering it to the next point in a sequence she can't see the beginning or end of. And the box gets heavier with each delivery, warmer, fuller. Soon, she thinks, it will be complete. And when it is, she'll be the one sitting in that chair in a dark room, waiting for a younger version of herself to arrive with a box wrapped in brown paper tied with string, waiting to tell herself, this is what you'll be carrying. These are the deliveries that never end. This is the phantom fare that you'll drive forever. Story 7. The Breakdown. Mitchell Harper worked roadside assistance for AutoCare emergency services, covering a territory that stretched across rural Wyoming, from Casper to Rawlins along I-25 and the connecting highways. At 56, he'd been doing this work for nearly 2 decades. Jump starts, tire changes, fuel deliveries, lockout services, and the occasional tow when a vehicle couldn't be quickly fixed on site. He worked alone, preferred it that way, and had developed a reputation for responding quickly, even to the most remote locations. Wyoming's empty spaces didn't bother him. He'd grown up on a ranch outside of Lusk, was comfortable with solitude and vast distances. His truck was a modified F-350 with a service bed full of tools, spare parts, fuel cans, and battery packs. He knew how to fix most problems on the side of the road, and for the ones he couldn't fix, he knew every tow company and garage in a 200-mile radius. The call that came in on March 7th at 1:22 a.m. was unusual mainly for its location. Dispatch forwarded him a service request from a driver stranded on Highway 487 near mile marker 89, about 60 miles south of Casper, in the middle of absolute nowhere. Highway 487 was a lonely 2-lane that connected Medicine Bow to Casper, cutting through high desert and ranchland with almost no traffic at night. The service request listed the problem as engine failure, won't start, vehicle type as sedan, and the customer name as Rebecca Marsh. The phone number was included, and dispatch noted they'd tried to call for more details, but got no answer. Not unusual, cell coverage was spotty at best in that area. Mitchell confirmed he'd take the call and headed south from Casper, his truck's headlights cutting through the darkness. It was a clear night, temperature in the low 20s, no wind. The kind of night where the stars looked close enough to touch, and the horizon disappeared into blackness. He'd probably be looking at a dead battery or maybe a fuel issue. Simple fix, get the driver back on the road, and head home for some late dinner. The drive to mile marker 89 took him 40 minutes. Highway 487 was empty, not a single vehicle passed him in either direction. His headlights occasionally caught the reflection of eyes in the sagebrush, deer, antelope, maybe coyotes watching him pass. He spotted the stranded vehicle at 2:15 a.m., exactly where the GPS coordinates placed it, A dark sedan, looked like a Honda Accord, pulled onto the narrow shoulder with hazard lights blinking. As Mitchell approached, his headlights illuminated the car more clearly. Late model California plates appeared to be in good condition. No visible damage, no flat tires, no obvious reason it would be stranded. He pulled up behind it, turned on his work lights, bright LEDs mounted on his truck that lit up the area like a stage. He grabbed his diagnostic scanner and battery tester and walked up to the sedan, peering through the windows as he approached. Empty. No driver, no passengers, no one visible inside or nearby. Mitchell frowned. He checked his phone. The service request was still active, showed the customer's phone number. He dialed it. From inside the sedan, he heard a phone ring. Muffled, but definitely coming from the car. It rang 4 times, then went to voicemail. "You've reached Rebecca. I can't take your call right now. Leave a message, and I'll get back to you." Mitchell hung up and tried the car's driver door. Locked. He walked around the vehicle, checking all the doors and the trunk. Everything secured. He cupped his hands around his eyes and pressed his face to the window, looking inside more carefully. The interior looked normal. Keys in the ignition. A purse on the passenger seat. A travel mug in the cup holder. A phone, the one that had rung, sitting on the center console. But no person. No indication where the driver had gone. "Ms. Marsh," Mitchell called out, his voice carrying across the empty landscape. "Rebecca Marsh. This is AutoCare Emergency Services. I'm here to help with your vehicle." Silence. The wind had picked up slightly, creating a soft whistle across the desert. Somewhere in the distance, a coyote yipped. Mitchell walked the perimeter, sweeping his flashlight across the sagebrush and the roadside. No footprints in the dust, no sign anyone had walked away from the vehicle. The ground was hard-packed dirt and gravel. Not ideal for tracks, but he should have seen something. He went back to his truck and called dispatch. "Hey, it's Mitchell on that Highway 487 call. I'm on site, but there's no driver here. Vehicle's locked, looks abandoned. Any other information on this customer?" Dispatch sounded confused. Let me check." The call came in through the automated system. Customer used the app to request service. "Hold on." A pause, keyboard clicking. "Okay." The request came through at 12:58 a.m. Location automatically pinged from her phone. The issue description was entered as, "Engine won't start, stranded, need immediate help." She didn't call, just used the app. "Well, she's not here now. Car's locked up tight. I'm going to look around a bit more. Maybe she walked to find cell reception or something. But this is strange." "Copy that. Let us know if you need Sheriff's Department for a welfare check." Mitchell hung up and decided to try the most obvious solution. He had a slim gym in his truck for lockout situations. If he could get into the car, he could at least check the engine, maybe figure out what the problem was, and leave a note for the driver when she returned. It took him 3 minutes to get the driver's door open. He reached in and popped the hood, then went to the front of the vehicle. The engine bay looked completely normal. He checked the battery terminals. Tight, clean, good voltage when he tested them. He checked the fuel line. No obvious leaks or disconnections. Everything looked fine. He got in the driver's seat to try starting the car. The keys were in the ignition, turned to the off position. He turned them to on. All the dashboard lights came up normally. He turned the key to start. The engine cranked strongly and fired up immediately, settling into a smooth idle. There was absolutely nothing wrong with the car. Mitchell sat there, engine running, trying to make sense of this. The driver requests emergency service, claims the car won't start, then disappears. And when he arrives, the car starts perfectly on the first try. He checked the phone on the center console, locked, but the screen showed missed call notifications, including his recent call. He checked the purse, wallet inside with Rebecca Marsh's California driver's license, cash, credit cards, everything a person would need. Why would she leave without her phone and purse? Mitchell turned off the engine and got out. Something was deeply wrong here, and his instincts were telling him to call the sheriff. But before he did, he wanted to check one more time for any sign of the driver. He walked down the highway shoulder, flashlight sweeping the darkness. About 50 yards south of the sedan, his light caught something that made him stop. Footprints. Not on the shoulder, but leading away from the road into the desert, heading east toward the empty landscape. Fresh prints, definitely made recently. Mitchell followed them. They were clear in the dust, small feet, probably a woman's size 7 or 8, wearing flat shoes. The prints walked in a straight line away from the road, not wandering or zigzagging, just a determined march into the darkness. He followed them for about 200 yards. They didn't stop, didn't turn, just continued in that same straight line toward nothing. And then they ended. Not gradually, not faded out, just stopped. One moment, there were clear footprints, and then nothing. No final impression, no disturbance in the dust, just an abrupt end, as if the person had vanished mid-step. Mitchell stood there, staring at the last print. His scalp prickled. He swept his flashlight in all directions. Nothing but empty desert, no rocks large enough to hide behind, no sudden drop-offs or gullies. Just flat, open ground. He backed away, returning to the road, his heart rate climbing. When he reached the sedan, he immediately called dispatch. "I need sheriff's department here now. This is a missing person situation. Something's really wrong. Copy. What's your 20? Highway 487, mile marker 89. And tell them..." He paused, trying to figure out how to explain what he'd found. "Tell them to bring tracking dogs or something." The driver walked into the desert and disappeared. Sheriff's deputy arrived 40 minutes later, followed eventually by another deputy and a search and rescue coordinator. Mitchell showed them everything. The car that wouldn't start, but now worked perfectly. The footprints leading into the desert. The point where they simply ended. The search and rescue team followed the prints and confirmed Mitchell's findings. They searched in expanding circles from the last footprint, but found nothing. No body, no more tracks, no sign of Rebecca Marsh. The car was impounded for investigation. The phone and purse were taken as evidence. Deputies contacted Rebecca Marsh's family in California. Her parents said she'd been driving from Los Angeles to Denver for a job interview, was supposed to arrive the next day, and they'd last spoken to her around 8 p.m. when she'd stopped for dinner in Utah. The highway patrol reviewed traffic camera footage from the nearest cameras, 30 miles north and south. Rebecca's Honda had passed the northern camera at 11:47 p.m., heading south. It never passed the southern camera, which meant somewhere in that 30-mile stretch, she'd stopped and sent the service request. But here's what kept Mitchell awake for weeks afterward. When the investigators pulled the phone records and app data, they found something impossible. The service request sent at 12:58 a.m. wasn't the only one. Rebecca's phone had sent 17 service requests over a 6-hour period, starting at 7:32 p.m., while she was still in Utah, according to her parents' timeline, and continuing every 20 minutes until the final request at 12:58 a.m. All 17 requests listed the same location, Highway 487, mile marker 89. All 17 had the same description. Engine won't start. Stranded. Need immediate help. But AutoCare's system had only processed the final request. The previous 16 had been filtered as duplicates or spam, automatically deleted by the system's anti-repeat algorithm. Which meant Rebecca Marsh, or her phone, had been trying to call for help for 6 hours before Mitchell received the call, had been requesting assistance for 6 hours before she even reached the location where she'd be stranded. The investigation went cold. Rebecca Marsh was never found. Her car was eventually released to her family. Mitchell read the final report when it was published. Inconclusive, missing person case. No evidence of foul play. No working theory about what happened. But Mitchell developed his own theory, though he never shared it with investigators because he knew how it would sound. He thinks Rebecca Marsh drove into something on Highway 487. Something that exists alongside the road, but not quite in the same timeline. Something that trapped her in a loop, where she was stranded at mile marker 89 for hours, calling for help, walking into the desert again and again, each iteration ending at the same point, where her footprints stopped. And when Mitchell finally arrived, after the system finally processed one of her 17 requests, he'd arrived at the end of the loop, after she'd already disappeared, finding only the final evidence. The car that worked perfectly, the footprints that led nowhere. He thinks she's still there, in some version of Highway 487 that exists in the wrong time, still sending service requests that will never be received, still walking into the desert trying to find help, still disappearing at that same point 200 yards from the road. Mitchell doesn't take calls on Highway 487 anymore. He's told dispatch he won't service that stretch, claimed mechanical issues with his truck that make it unreliable for long-distance calls. They reassigned the territory to a younger contractor, a guy named Steve, who's only been with AutoCare for 6 months. Last week, Steve got a service call. Highway 487, mile marker 89. Engine failure, won't start. Customer name, Rebecca Marsh. Steve asked Mitchell about it, said the location was familiar. Had there been a call there before? Mitchell told him not to take it, to tell dispatch his truck was broken down, to make up any excuse. Steve laughed, said Mitchell was getting superstitious in his old age. Took the call anyway. Steve found a dark sedan on the shoulder, hazards blinking. Honda Accord, California plates. No driver present. Car locked, purse and phone inside. He got the door open, tried to start it. Engine fired up perfectly. He followed footprints into the desert. They ended after 200 yards. Rebecca Marsh was still missing when Steve called it in. But here's the thing that made Mitchell's blood run cold. When Steve described the phone inside the car, he said it was buzzing with notifications. Service requests. Dozens of them, queued up in AutoCare's system, all sent over the past several hours, all from the same number, all requesting help at mile marker 89. The loop is still running. Rebecca Marsh is still trapped there, calling for help, walking into darkness, disappearing. And every few weeks, someone receives the call and drives out to find the evidence of her absence. Mitchell's retiring next month, moving to Minnesota to live near his daughter, getting as far from Highway 487 as geography allows, because the last time he drove past mile marker 89, just passing through, not stopping, not even slowing down, he saw something in his rearview mirror. A dark sedan on the shoulder, hazard lights blinking. A woman standing beside it, face turned toward the road, hand raised as if flagging down help. But when he looked again, the shoulder was empty. The breakdown is still happening. Over and over. In some pocket of wrong time, where the road goes on forever and the night never ends. And somewhere in that darkness, Rebecca Marsh is still walking into the desert, following a straight line towards something only she can see, leaving footprints that lead nowhere. Still stranded, still calling, still waiting for someone to find her. But no one ever does.